YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Can you see the screen?
That's why we have the other camera.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody to our next edition of Science Talks. In the meantime, please select your language of preference. You can select English or Spanish and silence original audio. We are going to have an interesting topic. We're going to talk about advances in water system assessment at binational scale. So first of all, Sam, do you want to say anything? I think you're muted, Sam. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's oh no. Okay, so here we are. Just a friendly reminder, please follow or select your. Yeah, no, that's oh, just give me a second now. I see what is happening. Okay, so here we are.
Technical issues. Just give us a moment.
There you go. Now, so first of all, welcome everyone. Bienvenidos a todos. We are having another event of Science Talk. In this case, we're gonna have Enrique Prunes, Jurgen Mahlknecht, and Juan Huerta. Just friendly reminder, please, remember that this event is co-hosted by the World Water Week with UTEP, Luis Garnica, Alex Meyer, and the rest of the people here. We organized this event together. Just make sure to select your preferences. Make sure that you select the language of your preference and click on mute audio. And from that, let's thank our sponsors. We have the California Institute of Water Resources, Arizona Water Resources Research Center, Texas Water Resources Institute, the North American Development Bank, and the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. Thank you. Gab.
Of course. Well, today we have here with us Sandoval Solis. You know him already. He's a great professor at the UC Davis, and is also our associate director. And we have here also, myself. I am the communication strategic planning manager of the forum, and a master's student at UC Davis too. So nice to meet you. Nice to see you again. And let's start. Our first panelist is Enrique Prunes. He's from Rio Grande. He's the Rio Grande manager and freshwater lead specialist at WWF US. Enrique works across the freshwater and food team to incorporate the connections of surface water, groundwater, and agricultural water consumption into all the team initiatives and beyond. He leads the programmatic work in the Rio Grande Rio Bravo, included continued partnership development, donor cultivation, and strategic decision-making around program direction and implementation. He also served as the primary focal point on the freshwater team for issues and solutions related to agricultural water management, groundwater and surface water hydrology, and related science and policy areas. He also supports the development of the science-based targets methodology for freshwater, water balance, and resources accounting models that link groundwater and surface water systems. Welcome, Enrique. It's a great pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Gabriela.
Mm-hmm.
So allow me to introduce Jurgen Mahlknecht, a great colleague, another person that has done a lot of work throughout the aquifers transboundary basins. He's a professor at the Tecnológico de Monterrey, Tec de Monterrey, leader of the Science and Technology Research Group. Before he was also the director of the Water Resources Institute for Latin America, civil and hydraulic engineer with a PhD in hydrogeology. Again, more than 25 years with experience in aquifer studies, isotope hydrology, water quality contamination. Yes, from 2008 to 2017, he was the director of the Water Center for Latin America and the Caribbean. He's right now the associate editor of the scientific journal Science of the Total Environment. That's a very good journal. He's a member of the SNI, the National System of Researchers in Mexico, and he has received a lot of good recognitions throughout his career.
Welcome. And last but not least, we have Juan M. Huerta. He's the General Director of Juan M. Huerta Inc. of Sarasota and PDM of Mexico City. Dr. Huerta holds a PhD in Systems and Control Engineering from the Cleveland State University. He's an experienced system and control scientist on the evaluation problems with an integrated and long-term approach. For over 3 decades, he has been a frontier in the study of the dynamics of integrated economic, social, political, and environmental systems, and has pioneered the design of sustainable policies for ecosystems, population, and natural resources. Dr. Huerta has been a consultant to the Joint Chief of Staff in the U.S. Department of Defense, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Camp Dresser-McKee, Hercules Chemical, Club of Rome, UNESCO, OPEC, IHE Delft, National Water Commission on Mexico, the Mexican Institute of Water Technology of Mexico, among others. Really impressive, huh? He has designed and built dynamic holistic models for world, national, and watershed problem solving. Welcome, Dr. Juan. So, we are going to start with our first question and first panelist. So I want to start with Enrique Prunes. Enrique, please tell us what is the main objective and questions your research is trying to answer?
Sure. Well, so first of all, thank you for the invitation to present at this great forum. And before I get to answer those questions, I just want to provide a couple of slides that I always share because I like to emphasize why World Wildlife Fund cares about the Rio Grande Bravo. And we have been working in this basin for close to 20 years now. And basically, the basin encompasses 5 important terrestrial ecoregions, from the Great Plains, the Chihuahuan Desert, temperate forest, including the Chihuahuan Desert is one of the 3 most biodiverse deserts in the world. In those 5 terrestrial ecoregions, it also encompasses 2 global biodiversity hotspots. So it's very important on the ecological biodiversity side of it's also, as you all know, a multicultural region that sustains 16 million people on both sides of the border, including native nations, pueblos, indigenous peoples, farmers, ranchers, and major urban and industrial areas. Next. But, next slide.
Okay.
But the basin today is is tragic. The state of the basin is tragic. It has been identified as one of the 10 most endangered and water stressed rivers globally. And we know that some of the challenges, of course, are the complex and fragmented water governance. That is a heavily dammed and managed and overallocated basin, primarily for agriculture, including groundwater depletion. The river has lost over 80% of its historical natural flows, and we know that because the University of California has developed some interesting analysis on that. And at least 75 species are imperiled by river flow depletion. And we know climate change anticipates temperatures that are about 3 degrees Celsius warmer by 2050. And on top of that, we have a rapid population growth. Next slide. So with that, we wanted to, because we have been working in this basin for many years, we wanted to know, okay, what is the basin health? If you assess basin health considering different components, water quantity quality, management and governance, ecology and landscape, society and culture, and what is the future going to look like for the basin considering these climate change scenarios? And what can we do to improve basin health? So with those 3 questions in mind, after many years of being working in the basin, we decided to implement this report card, basin health report card process. That is a process that the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science developed. And this is a project that we implemented in partnership with Audubon, University of Maryland, University of Massachusetts, with some support from the University of California. So we implemented this report card process with these 3 objectives. Engage broad range of stakeholders, academic institutions and technical partners. Communicate the current state of the basin. And with the future scenario modeling that we are bringing for the first time into this process, this is the first time that we implement these 2 methodologies together in a basin, we are trying to assess the potential future states. And finally, provide policymakers with evidence for substantive policy changes and a roadmap or a guidance for interventions to achieve the best future scenario to improve basin health and build resilience. Next slide, please. So the basin report card provides a broad level assessment of a region or system, communicates complex information that is based on real data, transparent and defendable, provides accountability, and very, very important, engages the stakeholders. This is a very participatory process. And with the future scenario modeling, that is the freshwater resilience by design methodology that the University of Massachusetts developed, we define a quantitative baseline of the stocks and flows of the water in the basin, evaluate the vulnerability to changes in climate, and assess a range of management strategies that can help reduce the vulnerability. So we have put this in this 7-step process: conceptualize, measure, grade, model, forecast, act, and improve. With these projects, we got from 1 to 5. Of course, next phase is act, implement, interventions, and then measure again to see if we improve that. Next slide, please, or next question.
Okay, well, that's something that is huge. That is a huge project, Enrique, and I know we're participating with Enrique too. And this is a very big, important project. So until now, what are the results and the implications to the current condition in this case study?
So I'm just gonna show a little bit of the results, or a summary of the results so far. And the first thing that I want to mention is that it was a 3-year process, 3-year effort involving 100 stakeholders from 63 organizations across Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas. And this is not fully binational yet. We started with that upper part of the basin because it's for where we were able to start because of the resources. Eventually, we would like to expand this for the rest of the basin. We will see. But so far, for these projects, we had really great participation from first the partners that I just mentioned, but also stakeholders from the private sector, the three levels of government, federal, state, and local, academic institutions, research institutions, again, the private sector, and some participation from native nations, pueblos, and acequias. And we hosted a few workshops and in-person meetings, and we finally released these last year, in November 2022. with the main thing being the report card for the Upper Rio Grande with a C grade, and I'm going to explain about that in the next slide, please. So basically, the process, what we do with this process is to know the basin health. The participatory process involves the stakeholders to identify values. What do they see as the values for the basin, and what are the threats to those values? And with that, we identify indicators for which we can gather data and then assess those indicators with the data that is available. And in some cases, we have to collect or implement like its own research projects to gather data for those indicators. And then score those indicators and then translate those scores to a report card grade from an A to an F. So it can be easily communicated. A being very good, the green, F, very poor, that is failing. So we ended up with 29 indicators that represent those values and threats. And we assess all of those from water quantity and quality, management and governance, society and culture, landscapes and ecology. And some are doing better than others. Municipal water supply, bird diversity are doing well. Annual low flow, which is the lowest flow of the year, is the worst scored indicator. And I'm gonna get into all the detail of the indicators that is available. Next slide, please.
One moment.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And this is assessed for regions of the basin. So we divided, for this project, we divided the basin into 4 regions: the upper Rio Grande in Colorado, the upper Rio Grande in New Mexico, the middle Rio Grande in New Mexico, the lower Rio Grande in Mexico and Texas. And each region is assessed, each indicator is assessed for each region and is given a score and a grade based on the data that is available and the thresholds that we identified for those indicators. The main message here is that, again, it's a C, it's a moderate condition for the basin, but the scores go down as you move from north to south. Of course, as you get to the Forgotten Reach in Fort Quitman, where the river is dry, the situation is more dire. Next slide, please.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's the current health or the status of the basin. But to assess the future scenarios with the University of Massachusetts, we developed this Upper Rio Grande futures model, which is, we're calling a tool to model and forecast the report card grades. But it's and this is a system simulation model that includes hydrology, reservoir operations, agricultural water use, and then the performance metrics or performance measures that are linked to the model. Some of those are linked to the model. The water quantity and quality ones, because are the ones that we can model in this Upper Rio Grande futures model to assess climate scenarios and management options. Next slide, please. So basically, this Upper Rio Grande futures model has the inputs to the system, which are the tributaries, the runoff, and then the extractions, represented by the irrigation districts or the irrigation diversions here. And then, of course, the control points, the gauges where the model is calibrated, and the diversion points of those, and the reservoirs. And then what I would just want to mention here is that this model was built from existing models, from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, the Upper Rio Grande simulation model that runs from the Colorado to Elephant Butte. But then with the great collaboration from the University of Texas at El Paso, we were able to connect the swim model that they developed. Luis Garnica here and Alex Mayer here collaborated with us in this. So we were able to extend the model all the way to Fort Quitman and cover the region of the basin that we were considering for this project. Next slide. Question.
That's impressive. So what are the future challenges according to these results, and what are the implications of those challenges, both at scientific and political level?
So again, it was great. We engaged a lot of stakeholders, key for this process. We assessed basin health we developed the model to assess future scenarios and management options. So the results from those future scenarios assessment, including many global circulation models that were tested in the model, a stress test, the model to identify vulnerabilities, are telling us that most or all models indicate an increase in temperature. And in regards precipitation, it's a slight trend towards less precipitation, but there are some models that indicate more precipitation, so it's uncertain there. But there is certain that temperature is going to increase. So then the model was tested with different intervals of temperature increments, and then whether more precipitation or less precipitation to assess vulnerabilities in the system. And next slide. So with this, again, I mentioned some of the indicators like annual low flow, zero flow days, that are when the river just goes dry in some stretches, and then inputs or Rio Grande compact compliance, that are the inputs to elephant buttes represented in this graphic, or the fraction of irrigation demands that are satisfied by surface water that are represented in the graphic below. So with some of the future scenarios or the climate scenarios that we assessed, for those metrics or water quantity metrics that we have in the report card, the scenarios are telling us that those metrics or those components of the system are vulnerable to climate change. And then next slide. And finally, with that, what we did is we hosted another few sessions with experts and water managers and some of the agencies and NGOs to identify a few management options that we can test in the model to see how can we improve those metrics. In this case, water supply for compact, annual low flow, near zero flow days, the spring pulse, agricultural water supply, municipal water supply, and evapotranspiration. And we tested in the model a few management options that are not new. There is some progress on that in some groups or in some regions that are being implemented. For example, reduce irrigation losses or fallow agricultural land. This is just rest land from irrigation, reduce municipal water demand. What if we maintain minimum ecological flows? And what if we reoperate reservoirs to reduce evapotranspiration upstream? So what you see here is just a visual representation of that. The numbers, the actual numbers for that are also available in the final report of this project. But this is sort of an initial trade-off analysis of if you do one management option, what do you improve? And most of that is improvement, with the exception of if you follow agricultural land, you see some, of course, less water available for agricultural water supply. Next slide. And then we also tested combinations of these management options or portfolios. What if you do the blue bar is just one, reduce or reoperate reservoirs. Option 2 is reoperate reservoirs but maintaining minimum ecological flows. Option 3 is reoperate reservoirs, follow some fraction of the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District in New Mexico, and maintain or meet those minimum ecological flows. And then option 4 is the 3 of those, but also with reducing conveyance losses. So then you see that, of course, the best will be to implement a combination of this. There is no silver bullet to solve the water challenges. A combination of these management options need to be implemented to see improvement in the system. And next slide. I think, yeah, all of this is available in those websites. So you just search Upper Rio Grande Report Card, WWF, you will find. And yeah, I just want to say thank you to our partners on these projects again, Audubon, University of Maryland, University of Massachusetts, the great support from UC Davis and everyone that participated, because it was truly a participatory process with many stakeholders and experts. So thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that. that exposition. I think it's a very impressive work. It's a very huge work, and we're very happy to present it here. So thank you very much, Enrique.
Yeah, likewise here, Enrique. Thanks a lot. I think, I mean, a lot of the take-home messages that you're building, I mean, some tools or some analysis that can be used for decision makers, the different tools that are already built to later test the scenarios, then the impact of climate change, that it is undeniable, and last but not least, the different alternatives. And I really like the summary, which is there is no silver bullet. There is no one thing that will do everything, but a lot of things. So before I actually continue, allow me to provide some time to Luis Garnica and our colleagues from UTEP that we co-host this event, and that, well, basically to let us know what are they doing there, what are the series of events that you have there, Luis. Luis, adelante.
All right, thank you so much, Sam, and thank you, Enrique, for your great overview. Obviously, there's a lot of things to see into it, and it's really interesting that we have developed this community of collaboration, and that somehow now we kind of all start to know each other, and we can see that someone is collaborating with someone else, and maybe I want to chime in with some stuff as well. So I hope we keep on going this and going through some great projects together. I think there's a lot to do. So just a quick advertisement. I want to really thank our friends here from the Permanent Forum of Binational Waters for letting us co-host this online event with you. Here at UTEP, at the University of Texas at El Paso, we're going through a week of activities all centered around water. And we call it World Water Week at UTEP. And the main thing is to align with the UN because World Water Day is celebrated on March 22nd. Every March 22nd, which is this Wednesday, that's where the UN kind of makes World Water Day their specific event. So obviously we invite everyone from here, everyone that's online, to also join some of the rest of the events that we have for the week. We'll be having a lot of panels, we'll be having talks, we'll be having a talk about the history of the Rio Grande. So they're gonna go back even millions of years before to see how everything looked like back then with one of our environmentalists here and geologists. So it's gonna be a great talk. We'll also have different perspectives. We also consider the arts, engineering, and the humanities. So we will have an indigenous panel to give us their perspective on water and nature, which is also very important to consider. And we will also have some very interesting talks with two other universities, the University of Chihuahua and the University of Ciudad Juarez. We will have up to 7 panelists joining us all together into a single conversation. So I'm going to post the link on the chat, and yeah, let's keep on going. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Luis, and thanks, everyone. This is also another friendly reminder that the forum is for all of you, that please do let us know if you want us to co-host an event or if you have any ideas for events, and we are happy to help to collaborate with you. So now let's actually turn to Jurgen. So Jurgen will be doing exactly, we will follow in the same 3 questions. So what are the main objectives and questions that your research is trying to answer?
Muy buenas tardes, voy a hablar en español. Ya que es mi trabajo estoy acostumbrado en mi trabajo a hablar en español. El día de hoy voy a presentarles parte de nuestro grupo de investigación, un tema enfocado más al tema de calidad de agua, al tema de contaminación de los acuíferos. Y entre las líneas de investigación que tenemos, un tema importante en el Tecnológico Monterrey es la investigación de dónde viene la contaminación de nuestros cuerpos de agua, como son acuíferos o ríos o estuarios. Entonces, en este caso, el enfoque de hoy va a ser más enfocado a contaminantes clásicos o tradicionales como el nitrato y sulfato. Si bien hoy día hablamos ya de contaminantes emergentes, un tema muy relevante, cada vez en muchos países se generan pues los reglamentos, los estándares para el agua potable. En el caso de nosotros todavía tenemos que también luchar o enfrentarnos al tema de la contaminación por nitratos y sulfatos, y es una tendencia mundial que el nitrato ha ido incrementado en las últimas décadas conforme el crecimiento y las diferentes actividades humanas. Entonces el nitrato pues está reglamentado en el agua potable, se tiene un límite permisible y eso es muy en apego a la Organización Mundial de Salud. Entonces, en el caso de nitrato, pues sabemos que puede generar efectos adversos en la salud humana, pero también en los ecosistemas. Puede producir ciertos efectos, por ejemplo, la eutrofización de los cuerpos de agua. En el caso del sulfato es un poco más sencillo, no tiene un límite estricto, pero podría producir ciertos efectos laxativos y también hay un límite que se tiene que cumplir. En el caso de nitrato tenemos muchas fuentes, como podemos ver aquí en esta gráfica, pues van desde los tanques sépticos, sistemas sépticos, y no nada más lo que son sépticos en el sentido de que las descargas de aguas residuales, tratadas o no tratadas, pero también las fugas que hay en los sistemas de drenaje y urbano, ¿no? También los fertilizantes, que puede haber fertilizantes inorgánicos, o sea, químicos, y fertilizantes estiércol, por ejemplo, o sea, fertilizantes orgánicos, que podría contribuir de animales, ¿no? Que puede contribuir a que estos lleguen al subsuelo. También, pues hay otras fuentes industriales, fuentes atmosféricos, depositación atmosférica, entre otros. Entonces, este es un gran número de fuentes que a veces no sabemos si tenemos un pozo, no sabemos bien de dónde viene el nitrato, y ese es nuestro tema, ¿no? ¿De dónde viene el nitrato? De cuáles fuentes viene, o si es una mezcla de fuentes, y sobre todo porque nuestros pozos en el agua, en las zonas rurales, están construidos de manera que hay pues no siempre se tienen los registros de los pozos y no siempre se tienen muy claro de dónde viene. En el caso sulfato es igual, tiene también depositación atmosférica a través de la lluvia ácida, también mucho de la industria, pero la parte más importante viene de la geología, a través de ciertas formaciones geológicas, por ejemplo el yeso o la oxidación de la pirita. Entonces hay diferentes procesos en el suelo y en la superficie. Y nuestra pregunta, si vamos la siguiente filmina, entonces es saber si es posible con un método efectivo, costo efectivo o eficiente, ¿no? De prevenir y remover y reducir nitratos y sulfatos del agua para que esta agua cumpla con los límites regulatorios. Hay que mencionar qué alternativas tenemos. Podemos dejar todo o sea, someterlo a un tratamiento, pero eso sería relativamente muy caro. En las plantas de tratamientos de aguas residuales, mucho del nitrato no se puede eliminar. Entonces tenemos otros métodos técnicas para tratar, pero es muy caro. Entonces, otra forma sería mirar hacia esas posibilidades que son no constructivas, que son preventivas, y es lo que buscamos aquí. soluciones económicas que miran hacia la fuente de la contaminación y esa fuente o las fuentes de contaminación, entonces tomar decisiones de manejo de los acuíferos. El objetivo entonces es identificar y cuantificar las contribuciones relativas de nitrato y sulfato de diferentes fuentes y procesos en el agua subterránea. Y en este caso escogimos el área de Monterrey y como podemos ver en la gráfica, pues tenemos diferentes fuentes, ya lo mencioné, pero también las fuentes, el nitrato que llega al acuífero está sometido a diferentes procesos y eso hace que se complica mucho la interpretación. Entonces, la siguiente, por favor. Se ha hecho ha habido muchos enfoques, esfuerzos desde el punto de vista de usar ciertos elementos químicos, por ejemplo, los haluros, como el yoduro, el bromuro, y también se ha hecho esfuerzo más adelante con isótopos, con ciertos isótopos que son parte de las moléculas del nitrato y sulfato. Sin embargo, eso solo no ha resuelto la situación. Aquí podemos ver algunas gráficas en la izquierda donde vemos, por ejemplo, el agua trae una podríamos decir, signatura, en inglés fingerprint, o sea, una huella que determina su fuente, ¿no? Donde desde la fuente tiene ciertos valores isotópicos que están dentro de las moléculas de nitrato y sulfato. Entonces podemos decidir o indagar de dónde viene esa agua. Eso es posible mientras no haya mezclas o procesos como desnitrificación o nitrificación o reducción, etc. Entonces, eso es parcialmente se resolvió el problema con los isótopos. Sin embargo, nosotros desarrollamos aquí una combinación de herramientas, de isótopos, herramientas isotópicos, combinado con un modelo estadístico que se llama basado en el marco bayesiano, que esa es la diferencia. ¿Qué es lo que hace el modelo estadístico? Toma los valores isotópicos del agua y le asigna una probabilidad en cuanto a los valores. Sabemos de los estudios previos que los valores iniciales por ejemplo, de un agua residual o de un fertilizante son muy claramente definidos, pero también hay rangos de incertidumbre. Esa incertidumbre se debe a variabilidades espaciales, a variables de medición de errores y otros rangos bioquímicos, ¿verdad? Por ejemplo, procesos bioquímicos que pueden suceder. Y todo eso está correlacionado. Entonces, mediante el desarrollo de este modelo, se llama MixCR, este modelo está codificado en el código R, en el ambiente R. Entonces, pudimos determinar las fuentes de los contaminantes en un agua. Entonces, aquí vemos algunas ecuaciones y también abajo una descripción, un review de cómo se tiene que trabajar en este enfoque bayesiano. La siguiente. Bueno, el caso de estudio fue Monterrey, una ciudad, bueno, de las más grandes y relevantes en México, en el noreste, de hecho en el Río Bravo, y es un sistema, pues, geológicamente dicho, hay carbonatos, estamos teniendo varios acuíferos donde se provee el agua para la ciudad de Monterrey. En este caso, usamos sobre todo los acuíferos que están dentro del área metropolitana y cercano. Lo que sigue. Entonces, bueno.
Sí, entonces vamos con la siguiente pregunta. ¿Cuáles son tus resultados y las implicaciones de estos resultados para las condiciones actuales del área de estudio?
I was about to ask
Okay.
you, yeah, the results and implications. Yes.
Sí. A través de los estudios químicos isotópicos pudimos determinar de manera pues preliminar las fuentes de diferentes pozos que encontramos en Monterrey. Estos pozos a veces están fuera de la ciudad y dentro de la ciudad. Entonces tenemos áreas agrícolas, pero también tenemos las zonas urbanas. Obviamente, como es una zona urbana que ha crecido rápidamente en las últimas décadas, con un más de 2% de crecimiento anual de población, inclusive en los últimos 20 años ha incrementado rápidamente el área urbana, la cobertura la mancha urbana. Entonces, eso ha afectado mucho y sí se puede observar en las diferentes fuentes. Entonces, observamos diferentes orígenes usando los datos químicos e isotópicos. Sin embargo, no ha sido posible cuantitativamente ver cuál es realmente en un pozo, cuál es la contribución de cada una de estas fuentes. La que sigue. Entonces llegamos a usar el modelo bayesiano, identificar y cuantificar las fuentes, utilizando esa estadística con una probabilidad condicional que incluye una cadena de Markov que también se emplea dentro de lo que es el Monte Carlo, la probabilidad de Monte Carlo. Entonces, llegando a eso, obtuvimos los porcentajes de las diferentes fuentes de agua dentro de cada pozo, pero también en lo general, cómo podemos aquí observar en agrupamos previamente los pozos en diferentes, digamos, clusters y investigamos o interpretamos en cada clúster cuál fue la fuente predominante. Eso se hizo, como podemos ver en la gráfica a la derecha, ya con los porcentajes. Tenemos, por ejemplo, el AD, que es depositación atmosférica, que es mínima. La SON es el nitrógeno orgánico en el suelo, y M y S son los fertilizantes orgánicos animales, y sewage, o sea, el agua residual, ¿no? Y en el sulfato hicimos el ejercicio también, y también podemos observar cuáles fueron las contribuciones en cada uno de los clústeres de estos pozos. ¿Cuál fue ahorita la ventaja que pudimos decir que cuáles son los porcentajes, con cuánto participa cada tipo de fuente de contaminación? La que sigue. Y eso es más básicamente el resumen de lo que se encontró. Pues este estudio buscó buscar las diferentes fuentes, también incluir los procesos de transformación, por ejemplo, si hay una desnitrificación, una nitrificación presente en el agua subterránea, todo eso se puede incluir en el modelo, codificarlo, y se aplicó en el caso de Monterrey. Entonces, las fuentes principales en Monterrey fueron, por un lado, el mismo suelo que trae nitrógeno, y lo que son el agua residual. En este caso, por ejemplo, en la zona urbana, la zona más vieja de Monterrey, el centro, tenemos una explicación para eso, porque hay tubería de drenaje urbana que está muy vieja, son de las más viejas y se tienen que renovar, y eso sí se pudo observar en este estudio, confirmar que esto tiene un alto impacto en el agua subterránea. En el caso del sulfato es diferente la situación. Ahí la fuente principal fue la deposición atmosférica, es decir, por el tema de contaminación del aire, y evaporitas marinas como el yeso está presente porque estamos en un ambiente de carbonatos, y también tenemos una parte menor que contribuye al sulfato, que es el agua residual. También, afortunadamente, estos
Jurgen,
están controlados
so
por
those are
procesos naturales, ¿sí? Y que se llama desnitrificación y reducción de sulfato. Adelante. Y esto está publicado en diferentes papers. Uno es en Monterrey, lo aplicamos después, que es la que sigue, las que siguen, también en otras partes de México, en la zona de la comarca lagunera, también en La Paz. Esto es para probar el método en diferentes ambientes, ya, ambiente urbano, ambiente más con fuerte agricultura, un ambiente costero y también en otras partes del mundo.
And Jurgen, just perhaps briefly, so what do you think are the implications and the future challenges? I mean, it can be scientifically or politically about your research.
Sí, de hecho es muy breve. El tema de los retos, tenemos científicos todavía, pero estamos trabajando ya en una siguiente etapa donde estamos afinando esta metodología. Tenemos todavía el reto de diferenciar entre la aplicación de fertilizante orgánico y el agua residual. No se puede 100% distinguir bien con este método, pero ya tenemos ahorita trabajamos en un nuevo enfoque y el otro también para entender realmente todo el proceso de la contaminación y la atención a la contaminación. Es muy importante el trabajo multidisciplinario porque son procesos complejos y por último, pues eso me lleva también a la otra parte y me gustó mucho la presentación de Enrique, donde se hace ese multi-stakeholder approach. ¿Por qué? Porque a nivel, digamos, política pública y institucional tenemos muchas veces esos problemas. ¿Por qué? Porque nuestro marco de gobernanza es a veces complejo y no funcional. Tenemos diferentes niveles desde municipal, estatal y hasta a nivel nacional. Tenemos ciertas funciones, instituciones, pero no siempre se observa esa comunicación, no siempre se observa que hay una coordinación entre los tomadores de decisiones. Entonces hace falta eso, a veces es un reto fuerte. Y también se tiene en muchos lugares en Monterrey y en otras partes el conocimiento sobre la calidad de agua, pero no por lo mismo, por lo mismo de la falta de el limitado marco gubernamental o institucional, pues también se tiene el problema que no se llevan a cabo soluciones efectivas para la política pública y sobre todo realmente para la salud, ¿no? Y pues a nivel sociedad también tenemos que reconocer el valor de un uso sustentable del agua subterránea para obtener al final de cuentas una población, una sociedad más sana. Bueno, pues es nomás un paper, un último que acabamos de producir. El tema es, pues, estamos todavía lejos de, digamos, de realmente atender las necesidades de calidad de agua, de una agua limpia, que es buena o saludable y para el ser humano y el ambiente.
And thank you, Jurgen. And I mean, quite prolific, but also I think it is a problem that you were mentioning. It has a lot of challenges to try to differentiate between the different sources and well, partitioning those, and then doing all the modeling without that much of a robust monitoring, it's difficult. So thank you for the work and also the approach. I really like that part of the probabilities and Monte Carlo approach. Anyways, Gabi.
Yeah. Okay, let's go with Juan Huerta.
Gracias.
Juan, what is your main objective and your questions? Talk to us about it, please. I think you're muted. You need to unmute your microphone.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. In a way, this is a historical case that took place some time ago, and it had to do with the Treaty of 1944 and some allocation of water that hadn't taken place from Mexico to the U.S. of about 1,314 million cubic feet. I mean, meters. And the story is interesting because President Fox had just taken over the government of Mexico, and at the same time, President Bush has taken over the government of the U.S. And he flew to Guanajuato, where President Fox was going to have a big reunion there. And once President Bush came out of the plane, said, Mexico owns all of this water to the basin. So immediately President Fox decided to call the cabinet and to see what was necessary to satisfy the terms of the treaty, and also at the same time diminish the impact on agricultural producers of Mexico. Next slide, please. Okay, so the agreement was reached among Mexican experts in water to generate scenarios in what I call the basin here, so not to repeat so many times, Rio Grande and Bravo. And so evidently there was no other choice but to determine how much water Mexico could deliver to the US, but also having the minimum impact on the agricultural producers. And next one. So the area that this study was going to look into is the one that you can see in this slide. And it is interesting that it sort of connects with the presentation of Enrique in Fort Quitman. And we needed to do the Mexican side, which was from Fort Quitman to the Gulf of Mexico. And it's got all of those rivers, the Conchos being probably the biggest one, and then a whole number of smaller rivers like Arroyo de las Vacas, Rio San Diego, Rio San Rodrigo, Escondida, and one that was very important was Rio Salado. Next, please. So this is just sort of the statement of the problem. As I said, it's historic. So let's continue on, please.
Of course. Well, so what are the results here and the implications in this case study?
Well, the implications were very important in the sense that taking water from agricultural producers was going to create some problems on the Mexican side, but at the same time there was a big concern of not having a situation, a binational situation that was beyond the water issue itself. All right, so then what it was asked is, what is it that we can do to build these scenarios? And obviously there are three forms of building scenarios. One is simply just to conform a group of experts and have them coming. That's what they call a soft scenario, but probably that was going to take much time to do it, and was not going to produce the data, the numerical data that was a fundamental part of this. So then there are two other approaches. One that is called ex post, which is basically statistical projections of the past into the future. But it was obvious that the situation here is that supply and demand were not like in the past that were softly connected. We were having a problem in which the demand and the supply were very strongly connected, and then it was necessary to come up with a different kind of approach. And the one that we propose is the called ex ante. The future change of the basin are stressed on the structure of the basin itself. Next, okay, let's go to the next one. I know that what I just said is not very clear to many people. And that's what I just decided to build a small model here that has population. And in a model, how do you make population grow or decrease? Well, population grows by the number of birthdays that you have, and population decrease by the number of deaths. And in mathematics, the birth rate is very important because that is a variable that you can change along the time. That's why every variable that you see in this graph has a t, which means that it's a function of time. And what can you do with that? You can create a differential equation or a difference equation like the one that you see there, that the population in the time t plus delta t is whatever there was before, plus the birthdays minus the deaths, multiplied by the small increment of time. By the way, in the construction of these models, the population is called a state variable. And all of the state variables in these models are built exactly the same way, utilizing differential equations. So let's go to the next one. So the key element here is that diagram. It's got a flow, it's got the stock, and it's got a flow in, the stock, and a flow out. And with that scheme, you can build any kind of model that can have everything involved in a region or in a basin, as it could be all of the environmental variables, the demographic variables, the industrial and agricultural production, and all of them. Why do I show all of those systems inside of the base? Because they are all connected and they all have an impact on how, in the case of water, is going to flow in and is going to flow out. So the model basin was developed as the tool for this project. Go ahead, please. One more. Next. And so, because as I said before, we need to generate numerical tracks. In other words, we needed to find numerical values of how much water we were going to send to the basin on the side of Mexico. So the model that was selected was called MAGUA, which is not an island in the South Pacific, is the Modelo de Abasto y Uso de Agua, which is a dynamic holistic model that I built with a group of engineers and programmers some time ago. And it is satisfy the requirements of the project. Go ahead, please. One more. So MAGUA basically is a mimics what are the elements that compose or that are part of a basin. You have the atmosphere, rain, temperature, evaporation, and so forth. Then you have the surface where you have the environmental system as well as the man-made activities. You have the precipitation that is converted into runoff. You have the storage that could be lakes or also could be dams. And then in the underground, you have the aquifers. So we had all of the elements that we needed to manipulate and to utilize the water and to store the water and to do all of the computations that were needed to finally bring together this model with the Treaty of 1944. Go ahead. So as you can see, the model is a little bit big. It's got about 350 differential equations. It takes some time to build, but MAGWA is a model that has been built and used for over 25 years now, and it has all of the elements. I'm not gonna, there is no time for me to go and explain what are each one of those frames that you have there, but you have population on the corner, on the left high corner, and then you have industrial production. And the one that occupies the most is the agricultural production, because we did it by type of crop on territory or regions being planted with corn or maize or sorghum, etc., etc. And you'll see how that is used in when you really need to find out how much water you can utilize for the allocation of water to the basin, and how much water you can use for, in the case of the agricultural producers. One more, please. So obviously, one thing that you have to do with the model is to formulate the scenarios. So at the time that we were building this model and we're going to use it, it was the time span was from 1999 to the year 2005. One thing that is very important to consider is that this model, this huge structure that I just showed, runs one day at a time. And that is super important because that allows you to do a lot of computations using reverse engineering and a number of other things that you actually do not need the data as, for example, what is the concession of water given to an agricultural producer. So you really need to know is what is the area planted by that agriculture producer, and then by reverse engineering, you know how much water it was utilized for irrigation, subtracting from there the water that came, for example, from wells, if they were there, if they were getting water out of wells, and also if there was rain. One thing that was very important, and I see for the talk of Enrique, that is still a huge problem, is the drought. And the drought here, utilizing the Palmer Drought Index, it was 40% on the rain media for the region. So to formulate the scenarios, you can change, as I showed you before, the birth rates. The birth rates are, by the way, not just one number. They are a series of numbers, a time series of numbers that because you can be changing the birth rate given any kind of policy like paternidad responsable in Mexico. Also, the same applies to the death rates, and everything else in the model is what? It is controllable. And that tells you that the model, you can take it to where you want it to go, and not where the model is where the model is going with the information that is got. So that is telling you that if you have information at the beginning of the run in the year, for example, of 1999, you have to set up the scenario, you have to design the scenario to determine where would you like to have in this case, the basin for the year 2005. Also, you have industrial output, crop surface, and so forth and so on. I have spoken about that. Go ahead, one more. Okay, this table here shows you what was the situation in the case, and I'm not going to go in detail because it takes a very long time, but basically the numbers that you see from the top of the table going down is what Mexico hadn't delivered to the US in the basin. And so you have there also the other thing that is very important is what were the periods of time in which this data, which is given in this volume that was given in millions of cubic meters, came from. Like in the first row, you can see that a volume of 32 came from the year of 1997. So we were owing, I'm talking as a Mexican, to the Americans water for a very, very long period of time. And at the end of all of this, we were, so to speak, if you're thinking that this is also the accountability in the bank, like in arrears in the Ciclo 25 by 1,263 million cubic meters of water, which is actually the number that President Bush gave to President Fox. And by rule of operation of the treaty, you cannot start a new cycle until the previous one has finished, or for some reason, cycle 26 had started even when cycle 25 had not stopped. So let's go to the next page, please. So there were two sets of scenarios built. The first one was considering the terms of the treaty that give to the American side in the basin 1/3 of the water produced by the streams that I show you in the graphic of the Mexican side of the river. And those should be delivered. But there is a condition here, which is that there is a minimum, that the minimum is 334.1 million cubic meters. So what is this telling you is that if this 1/3 of the water produced by the stream on the Mexican side is below that, you do have, in this case, to apply that rule and utilize the minimum required. So let's go to the next page that has a table. And that table shows you that if you were going to start on the left-hand side of the page with the 1,263 million cubic meters and go forward, the first three columns are just the beginning of this next cycle. And that's when it does most of the adjustment. And then started from there, it goes, the cycle starts on October 1st and it finalizes in September. And this one started in the year of 2001 and finalized in the year of 2006. And as you can tell, if you look at the final figure at the bottom of that page, they were only utilizing this, what we call scenario 0. We only were going to have a repayment of cubic meters of water, which was not enough. Go to the next page, please. So in the next page says, well, let's change the formulation of the scenarios. And then let's utilize for all of the years 431 million metric cubics applied to every one of the columns of the current cycle. So now let's go to the table there. Next. Hello. Hello there.
Gaby, la siguiente. Gaby. I think, let me see. Yeah, I know. Let me follow with, just give me a second.
So what happened?
No, basically, I think Gabby got disconnected. So just give me a second. I will.
So there are just 2 or 3 more and we'll be done.
Yes. Just give me 1 second here. I'm just going to the slide that you left. Oh, I see. I think you were you in here?
Yeah, go 1 more. Okay, so that was the net set of scenarios, right? 1 more, please. Okay, so you see that utilizing this policy of having of limiting the use of water to 431 million cubic meters, you do get as result 2,363.42 million cubic meters at the end of this 26 cycle. And that shows that Mexico would have repaid or would have allocated all of the water that had owned to the US up to that moment. And there is a number of different other things that came into this computation, but there is just simply no time to argue about them or to discuss them. But maybe in another occasion that we can have a little bit more time, I can present that. So if you go 1 more time. Okay, so what are I'm sorry. What are the future challenges according to the results? And what are the implications? 1 more. Okay, last time that I participated with you people in this very, very interesting forum, I got from one of the participants an excerpt of the last minute of the treaty that has, and I quote here, the Commission will establish a Rio Grande hydrology work group with technical experts from both countries to enhance information exchange, develop a binational Rio Grande model, and use the model as a tool to analyze water management scenarios, including scenarios related to the future water conservation project. Well, this, you can position this, what it says here, all right, in the results that I just presented. And so that tells you that, you know, a model like the one that it was built and worked some time ago, and it hasn't been used for a number of reasons, all right, it could be brought back in some fashion. Obviously, there are changes from the software to the data to a number of other things that it could be used to provide exactly the same kind of tool to try or to test, to formulate and test scenarios that can tell you how the next cycles are going to behave, given all of the considerations. One, of course, is the growth of the population. That's what the model has, population as a very important part of it. The industry also is going to grow, especially with what is happening right now with the new policies in the 3 countries, Mexico, the US, and Canada, to produce more products in this block, in the North American block. So that's all I wanted to present today, given the time available. With pleasure, I would do it again with more detail so you can see what's in the model, and we can talk about that later. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Juan, and thanks a lot. We had a question in the question and answer section. So what was the platform? And I'm guessing that the platform was Stella, right?
Yeah, the platform where the model runs was Stella. Now we are running our models in Vensim, because Vensim you can have connected all kind of software. Yes.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And now also there are some questions already asked for Enrique. So I will put it on the chat just so everyone. Another question is the model publicly available, Dr. Juan?
No, the model is proprietary from our company. Yeah, you can license it, right?
Yep. Yeah. The questions that I posted in there are for Enrique. I think you have already answered many of them. But I think the last one, it is still outstanding. From Juan Manuel.
Should I go ahead and answer? Yeah, okay. So yeah, the first one I answered to Gilbert, and then I shared the links. The other one that says in the context of drought and climate change, what is the opinion of the users in the US side of the basin regarding the compliance of the Mexican government with the treaties? I don't really know. I don't think I can speak, and I don't really know the opinion of the users in the US side, nor in the Mexican side very well. But what I will say is that we know, and I think with the presentation that Dr. Huerta just showed us, that we know, and with the minute 325 mandating the formation of the hydrology and policy group, it is clear that we need a more, as they are calling it, predictable and reliable schedule of deliveries. And so I guess that's what the different groups on both sides of the border are working on. And the other thing is that the river is in a dire situation, and it's also a user. And the river is not US or Mexico, it's both, is a border, and it's a jewel of the natural resources. And I think we also need to consider the river as a user. The river is in a dire situation, is depleted. So I guess that's sort of how things are. What I can share about that. It's a tough question.
You know, actually, rather than talking, as you're saying, rather than talking on behalf of one user or the other, what would you speak related with the river? If you were the river, or what you have learned from what is happening to the river, what would the river or the environment will tell us that we have to do? You mentioned already one. Please raise your hand. I can be a user. Do you have any other thing that you want to share if you were the river?
So one is we need to consider the river as a user, right? And we need to consider the river in those trade-off analysis. Like, how are we going to deliver water? How are we going to conserve water? And I think the other is, and this is something that World Wildlife Fund with many other partners and other NGOs and academic institutions, and many of you in this call, we have been working together towards is a shared vision for the basin. Not necessarily a shared governance, but a shared vision for the basin. How do we want to see the river together as a basin-wide, if you want, or as a united front? And I think that's the other thing that we need to work together. And the purpose of the report card project is going into that direction. How do we build that shared vision? What is the basin health? What is the future for the basin? So that's the other one. That's a shared vision, and I think those two are good enough. The river as a user and a shared vision for the basin.
I do agree. One other thing that, I mean, in the process that you did, you really went a long ways to invite different users, to invite different, well, users from different types of use. And I think that is been very interesting to build that shared vision. Now, there was a question there also for Jurgen from Fernando Magallanes.
Yeah, the question was focused, as I remember.
It's now in the chat.
How can we?
I put it on the chat.
Remove nitrate in water? Yes, there are technologies, obviously, like the one who mentioned Fernando Magallanes, which is used at household levels, but also in hospitals, especially the reverse osmosis systems, where the water enters under pressure through a semi-permeable membrane. And but these systems normally are relatively slow and energy inefficient. So they are useful, obviously, in this kind of the EMS, the hospital system, and at household levels. We have also other systems like ion exchange systems where the water is absorbed, the nitrate is absorbed to the resins, and this is also an alternative. But you have to think also on to regenerate these pellets from time to time, and also water is more corrosive, so you need a softener. So this is also, you have to invest in several other things, and it's normally not cheap. Another thing is also the use of distillation of water, which where you boil water and then you condense the steam, which also eliminates other things. So, but these are not at a large scale. Many of these options are not large scale options. And the fourth one is a newer one, is the solid phase denitrification, which mimics the nature. You have polymers with microorganisms which absorb or decompose nitrate. This could be another thing, but again, I think the first option and priority should also always be a look at the sources. So how can we eliminate or mitigate our sources? We can do, for instance, blending water with high nitrate, blending with water without nitrate, as an example. And at the end, we can always leave the well, abandon the well, and look for a new alternative. So these are maybe some measures which are more effective. And
Jurgen, I completely agree that, I mean, don't get me wrong, having a reverse osmosis systems at an hospital is key. I mean, we don't want to have any of the patients getting either baby blue syndrome because of nitrates, the new born babies, or having any problems related with E. coli or anything related with manure fertilizer. So I get it. But what you're mentioning is also correct, that is kind of trying to solve it, that is alleviating the symptom, but the reality, the illness might be the application of pesticides, of fertilizers, and that one it is at a different end that I think that is actually addressing the cost. So yeah, definitely all supportive. We have also one question for Juan Huerta. So Dr. Huerta, from what I gather, this is a question from Lorraine Lee. So from what I gather, the variables in the model can be handled through policies implementation. How can national priorities converge in the way of political nationalism and isolationism? Wait. Dr. Huerta, you're muted. Okay, let me just, there you go. Now, ya puedes hablar.
Okay,
go ahead.
Gracias. Well, let's start with the fact that the model is a tool. Like any other kind of tool, it depends on the hands of who is going to be operated and how much understanding is there from the side of what are the questions, the national questions that are being formulated, and how can those be translated into scenarios for the model. But that is, and how important is for the user of the model to obtain numerical results from that, all right? Which I think in the water well, we have seen that it is of first order to know exactly how much water we are using for what purposes and so forth and so on. But you can do that for many other of the variables that are in a basin, all right? And so yes, you can apply that to the ideas or the principles that you are espousing, in the case that you want to test something to be a scenario that could be very nationalistic. As a matter of fact, a few years after this, no, that was before, we built a computer model of Mexico, and we tested with several scenarios. And one of them, we call it the neo-nationalist scenario that does they got some very interesting results, considering some of the way that the policies in Mexico had been applied since that time, since 1995.
Thank you, Juan. Yeah, I mean that's the good thing about the models, that we can test different scenarios, and one of those can be not necessarily represent nationalism or isolationism, but policies that are only considering one group of users without the fully inclusion of others, or without considering other ones. So
yeah.
I think so we are at time. We don't want you to keep you here for longer than that, but just one last comment. Remember that next month we're gonna have in our coffee breaks, and we will be having a different type of coffee break. We'll send you a request for Mythbusters. If any one of you have in your presentations, in your conversations, always come across a given question that you always say like, that's a myth. And let me tell you why, of all the things that we have studied, why that is a myth. Please submit it. We're gonna send a form. You can submit it. We're thinking that it might be like at most 2 to 4 minutes for you to respond to that one. Also, please make sure to bring the adequate citations reference so we can back it up. And that will be a good exercise. Anything else, Rosario, that we are missing? And actually, by the way, happy Water Week.
just to thank you, Ted, for co-hosting this event with us, for inviting us to be part of your Water Week. Please enjoy the rest of the events. For the rest of the week is the Water Week, the Water Day, the Water Month. And I just posted the link of the myth. If you have a water myth that you want to share for our next coffee break, just send it. The link is on the chat. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to our guests, Enrique, Jurgen, Dr. Huerta, all doctors here, and all our panelists or co-hosts today, Gabi, Sam. Thank you, everyone who made this possible. So
yeah,
and I'll see you. Next one will be very fun. I'm sure next one will be super fun.
Gracias, Debbie. Thank you, Debbie.
Yeah, sorry for the technical issues.
Yeah, do remember, we're here for you. If you have any event, anything that we can help to coordinate, let us know. We will be happy to collaborate with all of you. Have a good one. Nos vemos. Nos vemos. Gracias a todos.
Nos vemos. Gracias.
Gracias.
Sí, nos vemos. Nos vemos. Gracias a todos.
Gracias, Juan. Gracias, Enrique.
Hasta luego. Gracias. Saludos.